Hey everybody, we are back for our Spiritual Habits devotional series. This is week 2. If you weren't able to join us last week, we were talking about these spiritual habits that we develop within ourselves to make sure that we're constantly growing closer to God. And there's all sorts of these spiritual habits we could be talking about. But last week we talked about studying our Bibles and what that does for our faith. I talked about one tool you can use called SOAP. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. Go back and watch last week's video. It's on our North Park Youth YouTube channel. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about a habit that I have had so much trouble doing in my entire life. I've tried it so many times. I've tried to develop it as a habit, but it never seems to work out. So today we're talking about journaling. Now again, I had trouble even planning this devotional because I know it's going to seem hypocritical because I'm talking about journaling and yet I'm really bad at journaling, but I'm talking about it because I think it's really, really important and I want you to develop this skill or this spiritual habit at an earlier age than I started trying to do it. I truly believe that the habit of journaling, the spiritual habit of journaling, is going to be something that allows you to grow closer to God because it kind of helps you keep track of where you're at with God. So many of you probably have experience with journaling either at home, right, on your own. Maybe you've got your own personal journal, or maybe you've done some journaling at school. I'm not sure what your experience with it is, but basically what you're doing is sitting down with paper or pen or on your phone or on an iPad, something like that, and just jotting down notes about one subject in particular. Now, I guess it can go a little bit broader than that, but in terms of journaling your relationship with God and staying connected with God through journaling, this spiritual habit we're talking about, basically what you're doing is just sitting down and talking about your relationship with God, the things that God's doing in your life, the passages of scripture that have been impactful to you. Maybe it's a teaching that you've heard or a comment that you heard in small group that you find really interesting and you just want to jot that down in your journal. Basically, what we're trying to do is communicate the current state of our relationship with God in journal form. Now, if you're anything like me, this can be a very vulnerable and actually pretty scary thing to do because sometimes it's really hard to own up to the fact that maybe you're not in the place that you'd like to be in terms of your relationship with God. I find that all the time. But I think when we're honest about our relationship with God and honest about ourselves in terms of what it means to our relationship with God, there's something that God can do with that, and it can reveal some things about both Him and about us. And not only that, but we then have an opportunity, once we've journaled a little bit, maybe over a couple of weeks or a couple of months, we can look back and see where we were at 2 months past. And then we can think about what we need to do differently going forward. There's also this element of knowing that when we look back and see what God's done in our lives, we can trust that He's going to continue to be there down the road. Now, last week I gave you a tool, SOAP, in terms of Bible study. I guess my tool for you this week is not really a tool at all. It's just to start journaling. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if it's point form or these beautiful long sentences. It doesn't matter if you're doing it once a week, once a day, whatever frequency you need to do or however you need to do it, that's the way that you need to start. Find whatever rhythm works best for you, but then just be honest with yourself and be honest with God. And then once you've been able to be honest with yourself and God, make sure you go back and read what you wrote in the past to make sure you're tracking with what God's doing in your life. So tonight in your small groups, I actually want you to talk a little bit about journaling. Talk about your experience with it. Talk about whether or not you really like it or you really dislike it. Talk about whether you find it easy or difficult, and then see where that conversation leads you. Either in your small group or maybe after small group, make sure you take some time to journal. Be intentional and be honest. And just write down whatever you're feeling on that piece of paper or on your phone or on your iPad. I know I want to get much better at this, and I hope that you do too, because I really do think that this is an amazing way for us to develop spiritual habits and to grow closer to God. Okay, that's it for me tonight. We'll see you next week with another spiritual habit. Have a great rest of your night.